Paranormal Dimensions is a regular feature on Mondays on the Paranormal UK radio network.
Hello, this is Michael Feely and you're listening to the Paranormal UK radio network, the UK's biggest paranormal network, and this is Paranormal Dimensions with David Young.
Hello and welcome to another show. Thank you for that introduction, Michael. Today's guest I think you'll find very interesting. Her name's June Lundgren. She's quite a well-known psychic medium and paranormal investigator. But before I introduce June, as I've said before, if you'd like to send me any emails or messages, etc., my email address is davidyoung2qn@yahoo.co.uk. That's davidyoung2qn, all one word, @yahoo.co.uk. Okay, right. Have you ever wondered what a medium's paranormal encounters were like? How are their experiences different from other people's? What can they see and hear that other people cannot? How do they communicate with spirits and help people with their paranormal problems, such as hauntings, attachments and strange occurrences? Now, June has written several books on the subject. The stories recount some of the medium's personal experiences with the supernatural, from her earliest recollections at the age of 9 to present day. So, I'm sure June will tell us much more about her books and her experiences as I introduce her right now. Hello, June. Welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Welcome to the UK.
Been there before.
And you were due to come over this year, I understand.
Yeah, I was supposed to come over in June for a wedding. My friend's son is a paratrooper.
Oh,
and he's getting married. So with all the restrictions, they put it off until June 2021, so I'll be back then.
Yeah, let's hope it happens. I think we've all suffered this year. We've all had enough of it, but anyway, yeah. You're a psychic medium, and also you do paranormal investigations. Would you like to tell us a little bit about what you do and what you get up to?
Yeah, my group. I formed a group. I was with a group for a few years, and I was the one they always called when there was negative entities that needed to be dealt with. And the rest of the group were not really into that sort of thing. And I didn't want there to be any problems. I didn't, if we went in on something, I would have to watch their backs, make sure that nothing attached itself, that sort of thing. And I thought, well, you know what? I really need to branch off. So I formed my own group called Ghosts and Girls Paranormal. As only the two of us, I do 99% of the removals, and my friend, she's a diplomat of the crowd. Because when I get to a location, I know right away what's there, where it is, and I have a tendency just to, head for where the entity is and then start the process of the removal.
Right.
But, it's like I said, it's not for everybody. And that's why when I was thinking of a logo for Ghosts and Girls, I thought of a funny one. I needed a funny one. The logo is two girls, one holding out a digital recorder and the other one behind her, and then behind the second girl is a ghost looking scared.
Right.
So I thought what I do is dark, so how about you gotta have a sense of humor. Come on.
Yeah, absolutely. No, you've got to do that. And what I'll do, when the show goes out, I'll actually put on the page, on the Paranormal Dimensions page, I'll put a picture of that out for you, so everyone can see what you're talking about.
Yep.
So, you're talking about these entities. Are they sort of like demonic entities, or are they just evil entities, or playful entities?
Yeah, my specialty is demonic removal. So it's like I do regular investigations as well, because those are kind of fun. It's fun when you get, quote unquote, a normal investigation.
Yeah.
where there's no negatives. Recently I went on a local one where there was an old movie theater and it had been empty for 30 years, and it was built in the early 1900s, and it had been like a burlesque theater, and the guy bought it and turned it into what you would call a pub and eatery, and they would have live performers on the old stage, and they would always get a lot of things being moved, lights being turned off, that sort of thing. People have seen, a woman that looked like she had burned to death. She was frequenting there. So I went out and once I get there, I know what's happened. On the way there, I pick up information and I told them about the entities that were there, and the woman she died in a fire, but she wasn't completely burnt. She actually died from smoke inhalation.
Right.
So I sent her on her way. And then there was a projectionist who died, like, in the theater itself, and he loved the theater. Him and his son died shortly after he did of smallpox. So they were there together, and they were the ones that were, moving things in the kitchen, and they seemed to be centered up in the loft of the bar, which is where the projection room was. So it was quite interesting, and while I was talking to them, a bunch of the other earthbound spirits that were wandering around stopped by to tell him how much they appreciated him bringing the old theater back to life and things like that. And it was kind of nice to have a normal investigation.
Yeah. Was there anyone famous that came through?
No, nobody famous played there. It's a very small town. Maybe not famous, but maybe known to locals. That's what I kind of meant. Yeah, there was a woman who was a burlesque. She was the star, and she was well known to the locals, and that's who came through the first place. And so she was quite well known, and she was the lead, the headliner in the heyday back in the 20s.
Yeah, because it's always nice if you can bring actual evidence to somebody of somebody that somebody knows, isn't it? And you can talk about names and things you can come out with.
Yeah, he told me after I had left, he told me that an older lady came by. She was in her 90s, and she told him the name of the lady that I had talked with and the name I got. And so that validated, because she had actually worked in the theater during the burlesque time as well.
Right.
Yeah.
So do you get anything going back to the old West days? Because obviously that was one of the where the people used to go to, wasn't it, Oregon?
Yeah, yeah.
Sorry, I should have explained you actually live in Oregon. I should have told the listeners that.
Yeah. There's a little place called Gold Hill, Oregon. And it's got there's at a park there is like a miniature town, Old West type town. It was moved from where it was originally to this park location. And there's a lot of activity related to that. And that was quite interesting. Unfortunately, there was a negative there I had to take out, but I was just passing through. I'd heard that it was an old town that had been, moved. So I stopped by on my way to Alcatraz.
Right.
And, visited the site. And it was quite interesting. There was a minister there, old time minister.
Yeah.
From the days of, gunfights and stuff. And there was a bar, what do they call it, a bar girl, whatever. She was a dance hall lady. She was there. And then, of course, there was the negative, which I removed. But I was headed down to Alcatraz to do a night investigation. So that was quite interesting.
Actually, that town sounds familiar to me. I did, because I have been to Oregon, and I do remember, and the name was Gold Town, you said.
Gold Hill.
Gold Hill. The name does sound familiar to me. I do remember a town where they said it had been moved, so I wonder if it must be the same. It must be the same place.
It's probably the same
because
one,
all the buildings were. Well, you can see they'd been sort of uplifted and put somewhere else. Because they weren't sort of laid out the way they probably would have been.
They normally would have. Yeah.
I believe they had sort of like a square with a tent over it or something in the middle, as I remember.
Yeah. Yeah, they were trying to.
Would that
fix
be it?
Up.
Yeah, it could be what it is.
That's probably it.
Yeah, I bet that was the same place.
I know.
That's interesting. Yeah. Anyway, let's talk about Alcatraz. That's interesting. The unfortunate thing is, when I went to San Francisco, I'd booked to go to Alcatraz about quite a few months in advance. And when we got there, they said, "Oh, well, we'll have to put you on the trip for tomorrow." And I said, "Well, we're not in town for tomorrow. We're leaving. We're only here for the day." So I missed that. All we did was a trip round on the boat, I was quite annoyed because I booked it about, quite a few months in advance. But anyway, that's my sad story. I'm sorry about that.
It was, I have timeshare, so I stayed in San Francisco at one of my timeshares.
Oh, right. I thought you were going to say a timeshare on Alcatraz for a moment, but...
No. Nah, I was over there, and I'm going into the cell block A, you get in and you walk around, and they give you this headset with, a pre-recorded, recording of, history of Alcatraz, and, told by the guards that used to work there. And I hadn't gotten more than a couple cells into cell block A when I heard this voice say, "You gonna help us?" And I looked over, and here's this guy in the cell. He looked like Peter Lorre, the actor Peter Lorre, when he did, I think he was in Birdman of Alcatraz or something like that, but he looked exactly like him, bug eyes and all. And
that was Burt Lancaster film, wasn't it?
Up around his ankles,
Yeah.
And I'm like, "I won't if you don't stop bugging me." He's like, "You're going to help us, right?" It kept going on and on. And I'm moving on down the cell block, and he keeps following me, and I'm like, then there were other voices saying, "You're going to help us, you're going to help us." So I made the rounds. I finally got to D block, which is where the solitary confinement is. And I thought, oh, good, D for demon, because that's what's waiting. So there was, it was cell number 13 in the isolation unit, or where it's solitary confinement, and the park ranger, she's like, "Well, who wants to go in here?" and blah blah blah. And I'm like, I looked at my friend, I'm like, "Let's go in here." So we go inside, and they shut the door. Of course, you can't see your hand in front of your face. It's so dark in there. But here comes this black mass, humanoid mass, towards me, and he had red eyes and starts growling, and I'm like, "Bite me, will you?" And you're gonna go. So I took him out, got rid of him, and I could feel that there were other ones down where they do the laundry and stuff. So I did remove them from a distance. I kind of had to go off to the side so people wouldn't see, me going down towards the laundry area. Ooh. And I did a removal there. There were 3 of them down there. And the reason why there were so many removals, so many demons down there, is because, you find places where people say no one should ever live there. This place is cursed, this land is cursed, no living person should live there. Well, the reason that people say that is because there's usually a demon entombed in the ground. It's one that's either gone, it got on the wrong side of Lucifer and was punished by being entombed in the ground. It's not the first time I ran across this. And that's what's under the rock. There's an old nasty demon under there. And as long as he's there, it's going to attract other demons. Other ones that aren't as strong as he is. But they'll always be attracted to the rock because of that.
Right.
And I told him, I said, I'm going to leave you down there. I said, because if I break you out of there, I said, Lucifer will find you and then you will exist no more. He said, no, leave me down here. I'm like, okay, I'll leave you there.
Right. Well,
it's funny.
How would he have got there?
What's that?
How would he have got there? How would he have been left under the ground like that? I mean,
Lucifer just entombs him. He opens up the ground and...
Oh, I see. It's done like that. Yeah, I was kind of wondering. Yeah, right.
Yeah, he opens up the ground and shoves them down in there, and they have to remain in that. It's almost like a cave. They have to exist. If they want to exist, they have to stay there.
Right.
I ran across one. The first one I ever ran across was up in Battleground, Washington. And I was called in on a case where the wife had died suddenly, and the husband was being pulled out of his bed, and he's being cut and pushed, and there was another paranormal group that went in on it, and they told him, well, there's a lot of stuff here. They told him, here, put these crystals in all four corners of your house, and it'll be fine. Wrong. He woke up the next morning, and each one of the crystals was broken in half. And that's when he called the group back, and they said, yeah, there's something negative there. We're gonna have her, me come out and help you. So I went out, and it was quite interesting because I usually get information before I even get to the location. And I was getting a lot of information about the wife having died. She had no health history of anything, any kind of diseases or anything. She'd always been in perfect health. They moved in 2 years prior to when I went there. And from the moment they moved in, her health started declining. And the husband said, well, she would tell me she hears these things, here's this, here's that, but I never believed her. And so, part of demons' MO is that they take a person and they ruin them financially, emotionally, health-wise, you name it, their life goes in the toilet. And this woman had a rare form of cancer. It's like 1 in, 100 million people would get it. And she had no family history of it or anything else. And I told him, I said, well, you should have listened to her because there's a demon here and it's an old one. I said, and it's entombed in the ground, but it's broken out because when they built these houses, it opened up the ground. And so he's free, but he can't go anywhere because he knows that if Lucifer finds him, he's going to be no more. So he's making their life hell. It would pull him out of the bed. It would scratch him, try to shove him down the stairs, all kinds of things. And his wife finally died, and she was trapped there, trapped by the demon. And there was a little old lady that was trapped there as well as a young boy. And they all had to be released. So I know where the demon is, so I'm headed upstairs, up the staircase, and my two friends wanted to go with me. So one of them's an ordained minister. He's an ordained minister, and his wife. They're paranormal investigators as well. They wanted to go with me, so I'm climbing the stairs and taking the lead, and the thing tried to push his wife, the minister's wife, down the stairs. And the demon reached in and grabbed a hold of the minister's heart and started squeezing. He thought he was having a heart attack. I stopped it. But it's like, you shouldn't piss me off like that. So then we got upstairs and I got it cornered, and Michael and Gabriel appeared at each side of the demon, had grabbed a hold of it. And I told it, I said, I want you to tell me why you're here, what you're doing here. There's no reason you should be here. And it was like nasty, and of course, always nasty. And I told it, I said, if you don't, I said, you don't have to worry about Lucifer. I said, you'll have to worry about me. It says, because I'll take you out. It finally told me that it had gone against Lucifer. He was given a job to do, and he messed up and decided that he didn't want to do the job anyway, so it didn't matter to him. So Lucifer found out and entombed him in the ground and said, you'll stay here forever. You come out, you're dead. So that's where he's been there for, well over 1,000 years.
Wow. So are there, to your knowledge, are there many of these demonic entities, entombed like that? Or, what is it, around the world, obviously? Not just in America.
No, it's not just in America. There was one at Hampton Court that I removed when I was over there the first time back in 2017. I was with Howard Hughes, the Unexplained Files. Mm-hmm. He's a friend of mine. He wanted to show me Hampton Court, and so we had lunch, and then we decided to go for a tour. Just walk through the place, and we go out into the main hall. When you first get there, there's this huge main hall with a door at each end. And I heard the sound of a door opening to the left of me, and I turned and I'm looking, and he said, Howard's like, what are you looking at? I said, the door's opening. And he's like, I can't see it. I said, it's opening. And then out pops, Henry VIII. He's just, staring at me. He's like half in the door, half out the door. And the first word out of his mouth was witch. And I said, bite me, asshole. I said, you're uglier and fatter than your picture. And he slammed the door right back in.
And was he much like the art pictures that we see?
Oh, no. He was shorter, fatter, and not good looking at all.
Right. So, obviously, the artists who ever painted those pictures wanted to give him a good impression.
Either that or face the guillotine, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
So, you better not ditch them, because you'll be sorry.
So when you visualize these entities, how do you actually see them? Do you see them as beings, or do you get like an image in your head?
How demons work is most people don't. I would say there's probably maybe one or two people in the world that see them as I do. I see them in their true form, which is quite different than most humans envision them. Most people envision them like half man, half goat, devil horn, all this creepy stuff, pitchfork, all this stuff. What happens is they reach into your mind and they pull out your preconceived image of what you think that a demon or a devil looks like.
Oh, I see.
And they use that to put into your mind that same image, but only 10 times worse. They want to elicit fear. That's their whole gig, because they feed off of the negative energy that comes from fear, anxiety, all of that. And so that's how they do it. So most people will see them that way. I see them in their true form. They're archangels are 7 feet tall, 12-foot wingspan, and they're brilliant white, and their faces, glow. All their, what would be skin for us, they glow, and they have a happy look on their face, not, sometimes sober, depends if Michael's in a snit or not, but they look like that. Well, the demons used to be angels at one time, so hence the name fallen angels. So they're about 7 feet tall, 12-foot wingspan, but they're solid black. It's and their face, it's not like a normal face. It's like when you look into it, it's like looking into a opening where there's nothing but horror and pain and suffering and evil. I mean, it's just, I mean, most people can't even look in their eyes because it causes such fear. But I've been seeing them like that since I was a child. And Michael was with me since my birth, and he says, you see them as we do, as angels do. He said, you see them in their true form. He says, that's the difference. He says, don't be afraid of them. He says, because they won't hurt you. I won't let them hurt you. When I was about 3 or 4. That's what he told me. And so he says, I want you to watch them. I want you to watch them. I want you to see how they work, what they do, because you're going to need it later. When you're a kid, you don't think about that. You just like, oh, okay, he said to watch them, learn from them, see what they do. So that's what I did for most of my life until I died in 1988. I had always been able to see them, understand them, even though they speak Aramaic. My brain is hardwired to interpret it, so I can understand what they're saying. And it's like, it's crazy, but I see them all the time, everywhere. If they're causing problems, that's a whole other situation. But in 1988, I died in a motorcycle accident.
Oh, wow.
And that was when Michael says, my grandparents were there to meet me, and Michael says, you're here because you need to understand who and what you are. He says, this is something that you have each and every lifetime that you live. And I'm like, I'm just me. And he's like, no, you don't understand. And he put his hand on my forehead, and all of these lives flashed before me. All must have been a matter of a second or two. There's like 131 lifetimes. And he's like, look down at yourself. He says, this is who you are. So I look down, and I'm as tall as he is, and I see these wings out of my back. And he says, and I have different color hair. I have like a dark auburn hair and blue-green eyes. And he says, this is you. This is who you really are. He says, your soul is Ariel the archangel. And he said, you were sent down to learn to have compassion for mankind. He says, this is your 131st lifetime. I said, I must be awful darn stubborn if I haven't learned it by this time. And he just laughed. He said, your job now that you know who you are is to be the demon slayer that you are. And so that was back in 1988. And I've been doing it ever since.
Wow. Well, I'm glad you survived it. Anyway, did you feel that you had a choice to come back?
Oh yeah, I had the choice. They said, my grandparents said, you're not supposed to be here. And I'm like, I told her, I said, I know. I said, I don't know why I'm here, but I'm here. And that's when Michael said, you need to understand who and what you are. And it's like, okay. So my first removal was a trip because my sister-in-law called me and said, there's something wrong with your brother. He's got his eyes turned black and he's growling. And she says, I'm afraid. And I'm like, okay. I said, I'll come down and see what's going on. So I went down. And I waited for him to get in the house. He didn't know I was there. And I pulled up outside of the house, and I got out of the car. Michael says, get out of the car. He says, I want you to call the demon towards you. And I'm thinking to myself, are you out of your mind? These things can hurt me. And he's like, do it. So I called the demon forth. I said, demon, come forth. All this is done telepathically. And out from the wall of the house, out comes this mass that morphed into how I see a demon. And it's calling me everything but a nice person. And I'm like, bite me. And it's getting closer and closer. It's about 5 feet away. And then suddenly my consciousness goes to the back and Ariel comes forward. And I can hear what she's saying. I can see through her eyes and what's going on. And she grabbed the demon by the throat. Said, I know you. And she said its name. She said, you're not supposed to be here. And then she pulled out a white light sword and sliced through it. And it died. When they die, they can't come back, obviously. And their remains turn into almost like sand. And it spread out into the stars.
Wow.
And when Ariel went back where she's supposed to be, in the back of my mind, I told Michael, I said, you used me as bait. And he's like, you know what? you had to understand that you could do this, that Ariel would always have your back. And I'm like, but next time, don't do that again.
I'm glad you brought up reincarnation, because I was going to ask you about that and talk to you about that. But before I do, you mentioned about the fear that these beings or entities thrive on. Now, I don't know if you follow the UFO field at all.
Yeah, periodically.
We do hear of reptilians who are interdimensional beings that attach themselves to human beings, and they supposedly thrive on fear also. Would that be the same entity in your...
That's what people think. People think of as demons. That people see these attachments. They're just like, when a demon attaches itself to you. Demons are interdimensional beings. When the war between heaven and hell happened, it wasn't heaven and hell at that time. I've seen all this because Ariel's seen all of it. There were all light beings at the one time. And we had physical bodies on another planet, several galaxies away from where we are now. And we were primitive. And that's when, the greater consciousness, or God, found us on that world and helped us to evolve beyond war, famine, disease, all the anger, all that sort of stuff, violence. And we were in the pursuit of knowledge. It was knowledge that we were pursuing, and we evolved into pure energy. When everyone had finished evolving into pure energy, we traveled as a group to, everywhere they could go, they went to observe, life forms and, the universe. And then one day, thousands of years later, some of the souls said, we'd like to have a physical body again. We'd like to have children. We'd like to, know physical love. We'd like to, grow old with someone, that sort of thing. And Lucifer and his followers said, no way. We don't want any of that. We do not want to be subject to pain, suffering, growing old, disease, none of that. We don't want to be encased in a shell. And so that's what caused the war. And in the end, Lucifer was disarmed by Michael, and his son was disarmed by Ariel. And God told him, I'm going to give you exactly what you want. You're never going to be able to take on physical form again. So he opened a rift into a dark dimension, and they ushered them all in there, and he sealed the rift. And that's where they've been since then. At first, they were okay with it because they're like, we don't want to do that anyway, so we'll be fine. We have our own place. But over the centuries, they've grown spiteful, angry, they want revenge. They blame every single white light soul. They blame everyone. That's why they're all about bringing pain and suffering to the living, because every living person has a white light soul in them. So they're all about causing as much pain and suffering as they possibly can. And people ask me, well, what do they want? I said, that's what they want. That's their whole goal, is to cause pain and suffering.
Right. Is that why this world's in quite a lot of pain at the moment, with all sorts of things going on? Is some of that because of that?
Yeah, some of it is, and I would say about 60% of it are the demons, and the other 40% are humans. All the negative energy in the world is usually from humans, so it's never from an animal, it's always a human. But right now there are more demons in the world than ever before at any given time. I mean, in 2013, God said to me, listen, starting this year, September this year, there's going to be more paranormal activity, there's going to be more violence, more mental illness, different new disease will be found. And I'm like, oh crap, that's not a good thing. So I watched and I waited. And in September, then back in Connecticut where my friend lives, There were the school shootings where all those children were killed. That started it. And it's been picking up speed ever since. And even the Vatican, if you look at Newsweek magazine, January 25th, 2018, there was an article in there that the Vatican never talks about it. Vatican is training more exorcists than ever before because of the increase in possessions or, influence. It's rampant. They never even admit it most of the time. So for them to come out and say that, it's got to be bad.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I mean, the Vatican itself, it's quite, I'm quite interested in that because there's so much in the Vatican that everyone would like to be able to see. They've got so many treasures and things tucked away that deprived from human eyes. Why do you think that is? Why is it all hidden from us?
I'll tell you part of it. I got a phone call from someone that said, I have a problem, I need some help. So I'm like, okay, fine. So I call the guy. He says, I flip houses for a living. So he takes, rundown houses, makes them new again. Well, this house that he had been working on was in a fire. And there was a part of the floor that wasn't burned, wasn't touched. It was almost like the fire went around.
Hello?
Pulled up the boards because we were going to replace the floorboards. Yeah.
Sorry, you cut off for a moment. It's all right.
Oh.
Carry on.
Okay.
Yeah, carry on.
Okay. So got this call from the guy. Says, we pulled up the floorboards in this house, and there was this book in the floor. And he says it was a huge book. He said it was about 3 feet by 4 feet. And he said it looked like it was really ancient. And it took two of them, the weight of it took two of them to pull it out of the floor. And from the moment they pulled it out, bad things started happening. And he says, I said, it's a book of demons. I said, and you opened it, didn't you? And he's like, yeah. I wanted to see what was inside. I'm like, I'm thinking to myself, you're an idiot. But I didn't say it. I'm like, you should never have opened it. I said, I know this book. I said, Ariel knows this book. It's a 13th century book. It was handwritten, pictures and all, of every demon, every old demon, and the incantations for bringing it forth, and how it was how the demon came to be, its name, everything. All of that was in this book. I said, this book was stolen from the Vatican. You know that. He's like, no. I said, yeah. I said, if I was you, I said, I would call the Vatican and I would tell them, this is the book I have. And they will send someone personally to pick that book up. Because that book should not be mailed, shouldn't be handled by anybody. So I told him, I said, you better do it. He said, because if you don't, your life is going to go in the toilet 24/7. So last thing I knew, he did call them, and they were going to send somebody out to get it. I'm like, yeah. I said, can you imagine mailing this thing?
Wow, yeah.
No.
So
that's accident waiting to happen.
So does that mean that the Vatican is full of these types of books? That they, I mean,
not just books.
Obviously, you wouldn't know everything about it, but
not just books. There are items there that have demonic attachments to them. There are ones that were, that where the demons were bound to these items. There's several chairs. There's a couple of tables. There's several books. There's all kinds of things, and they're all in the catacombs down there.
Wow.
My physical body can't see it, but I can send my spiritual body there, and I walk through there, and I'm like, oh my God. No wonder. There's a lot of problems.
So, do the popes, one after the other, do they actually have the knowledge of these books, or is it denied to them?
Yeah.
They do have the knowledge of it. It's not denied to them.
Yeah, no, they know they're there. And unfortunately, there have been popes where they've used the demonic influence.
Right.
So, it's like, when you wonder why the Catholic Church has so much problems.
Yeah.
Think about that.
Yeah, I mean, I try not to get too religious on this show. I'm personally, I'm not religious myself. I have a spirit. I mean, I do believe in spiritualism. I have a spirit,
right.
and I think the spirit is in all of us, But
yeah, exactly.
I mean, how do you visualize God as such? I know you mentioned God earlier on. Do you mean that is it in a religious sense, or is it something that's in all of us? And is the way I see it.
The way it is when I went to the other side, it's like I saw God. He was there, and he was in the background, and his countenance is so brilliant that it's hard for you to look at him. It's almost blinding, but you can. For me, because I was still in my physical consciousness. Your brain has to make sense of what you're seeing. So you see it as a representation of being a man. And, you feel this absolute sense of peace and absolute sense of love. I know that the moment I got on the other side, I could hear each and every soul, and on that side as well as the earth side, every soul I could hear. It's like a hum in the background, and you're conscious of it, and they're all interconnected to God. They're all like a part of him. He's a little bit of him in each of us, and you just know it. It resonates, and you can feel it. And if you want to think of somebody, then they'll be right there. You can see them. You can interact with them. The thing is, on the other side, as in the dark realm, thought becomes reality. And it's the intention behind the thought that gives it power. That's why Michael can be in 1,000 places at the same time. Because there's no space there. There's no distance there. It's like, I know that I saw it as surrounded by, white light clouds and stuff like that, and there was a floor, but that was my human brain trying to figure out, trying to put reason to it, a picture to it. But it's Michael says, look down there, and suddenly a bay window appeared. He said, you see all those people down there? And I said, yeah. He says, you see the strings that are coming out of them, the threads? And I'm like, yeah. He says, the ones that are lit up are the ones who have made the connection, the soul connection. He says, the ones that are dark are the ones that have not made that connection yet.
Oh.
He says, everyone is connected to us up here. Everyone. I'm like, that's cool. I mean, and then I said, well, if heaven exists, I said, what about hell? Does that really exist? And he took my hand. We went a few steps, and he waved his arm over the cloud floor, whatever, and opened up this pit. And there were people screaming and trying to get out. It was like a thick, tarry substance that was keeping them in. And it hurt my ears to hear them. And he waved his arm and it closed. I said, okay, I get it. They both exist.
Right.
He's like, yes, they do. He says, but it's not for you to deal with here. He says, you're to go back and to start, doing his work in the physical world and do what you do best, Demon Slayer. So I've been doing that since 1988.
Wow. I mean, many people would think of Earth as hell, wouldn't they, really, I think, sometimes?
Yeah, well, there are times, yeah.
But obviously it's much worse than that, even.
Oh, yeah. Unfortunately, it's like, God says, he says, we have long talks. He's like, people always blame me for everything that happens in their life. Why are you punishing me, God? Why are you, not giving me what I want, God?
Yeah.
And my first book came out of that long conversation. And he says, I don't have to do anything. You guys are real good about screwing your own selves up. He says, I don't have to do anything. He says, you guys do it all. You don't need help from me. And that's when he told me he wanted me to write the first book, A Medium's Guide. He says, I want you to write a book. I want you to tell people that I do hear them, I do understand, and I give them what they need, which is not necessarily what they want. So people need to understand that.
I see. So you do actually see God as a separate being to the rest of us. Because I've always, I've always visualised, I always thought of us all having a part of God with us, but I suppose what you're saying is, he's a separate entity, but we are all connected to him. Is that kind of?
Yeah, exactly. That's how it is. It's like, he's like saying he's over here, and there's a string tied from him to everybody that's living, every soul. If you're not up there, if you're on Earth, that's the way it is. Up there, it's just normal.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, seeing demons, I've seen them this way all my life, and I'm just turned 62. So, it took me quite a while to understand that not everybody sees them the way I do. When I was a kid, I'm like, do you see that? My grandmother was a medium and a psychic. And she's like, she could see through my eyes. I would take her hand and put it on my head, and she could see what I see. She says, no, I don't see them like that. She says, I see them differently. She taught me all she could for the first 5 years of my life, when my mom kind of dumped me on my grandparents and ran off. And so when my mom came back, I had to go live with her, and she didn't have gifts. Well, she did, but she turned her back on God, so there you go. Okay. So I spent most of my teenage years hiding my gifts, and that's why I left for the military when I was 17.
Wow.
Left home.
Yeah, it sounds like you've had a bit of a tough few years, and so did anything happen in the military with mediumship-wise?
Oh yeah, people, it's like you don't advertise it in the military because people, they frown on that sort of stuff. But my friends knew what I did, and then I had one night where I was working ER. I'm a nurse. I was working ER, the emergency room, and I got a call. Said that, we haven't seen this guy for a few days, and we're concerned, and his door is locked, and we're afraid that, he's dead inside his room in the barracks. So they wanted somebody to go there, medical. So another guy, a tech that was on with me, we took the ambulance and went over, and I had him unlock the door. The minute he unlocked the door, I saw a demon standing in the corner. It's like it was waiting for him to die. And he was kind of curled up in a ball. And I had seen this guy before. He's a chaplain's assistant. So, it's like, what the heck? Well, come to find out, somebody had put PCP, angel dust, into his soda at a party. And he doesn't drink, let alone anything else. So he went a little crazy. So he was getting ready to die. He would have died in the next 24 hours. So we took him back to the emergency room, got the IVs and stuff set up, and I went out of the room to do something. I can't even remember what it was, but I went back in, and here's this thing trying to reach into him. And I was like, I told it, I said, back off. He says, the demon says, this one's mine. I said, no, it's not his time. And I heard myself saying that, but at the time I didn't know what was inside of me. But I just thought, that's how I'm reacting. And it must have seen Ariel because it backed off and left. So, but, at that time I didn't know what was inside of me. I just knew that demons wanted to steer clear of me.
I mean, talking about dying and death, we don't want to go too morbid, but many people have a fear of death. Do you have that fear of death now?
No, I've been there, done that. It's like, I don't fear it. I've seen my death. I know how I'm going to die. And I'm good with it. And I'm going to be like 93 years old. I'm going to go to sleep and not wake up. That's cool. I've been up there before. Grandma and Grandpa's there. I don't have any issue with it at all. The only issue I would have would be leaving my son, That's and my animals, but that would be the only thing. But I know that I can watch over them from the other side, so.
Yeah, I think it's that actual moment of dying, isn't it, that people fear most. I mean, for every minute that we're alive here, it's that wondering what it's going to feel like to take that last breath.
And it's the fear of the unknown.
Yeah.
If you haven't been dead before, quote unquote, in this lifetime, then, you're afraid because you don't know what lies beyond. You don't know if what you've done here in this world has been good enough to earn you a place, in God's world or not. A lot of people say, I've done, horrible things and I don't know whether, I'll be let in or not. A lot of them think they'll go to hell. It's like the Catholic Church always make people believe that if you commit suicide, you're going to condemn your soul to hell. But that's not true. It's absolutely not true. Because if you stop and think logically about it, if you want to be logical, what kind of a loving, forgiving God would condemn you to hell for wanting to get out of the pain you're in, whether it's physical, emotional, mental? What kind of loving God would do that? Would throw you into hell for that? It's like it just doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you, my wife Jill, she actually died way before I knew her, because she's got asthma, you see, and she was actually taken to hospital, and she died twice on the way to hospital. She was brought back to life, and she says she remembers actually dying and actually being given the choice to come back or not. But she remembers what you said about that light and the feeling of absolute love and everything, and but she was actually given that choice to come back or not, as it was. Or she says she did. But they already know the choice. Your soul already knows the choice. Yeah, I guess, yeah.
And has already made it. Yeah, your soul already knows that that's not your time.
Yeah.
And that you have to go back.
I mean,
but there's a lot of people who don't want to go back.
Oh, she said she definitely died because even the ambulance drivers came in to see her in hospital to say, and they actually told her that she'd died twice on the way to the hospital, and they wanted to come in and sort of see if she was okay and everything. So, but this is before I knew her, but she hasn't got any fear of death either,
No.
Well, she says she hasn't.
Once you've been on the other side and you see what's waiting for you, it's like it's no big deal.
Yeah.
People say, I tell them, I said, I've been there, done that. It's not a big deal.
Yeah. I mean, I believe in the spiritual self, and I do, I know we do go on. Well, I do believe we go on anyway. I hope we do. I might get a shock when I do go, but I think, from what she's told me and what you've told me and what other people have told me, I actually, I wonder if I will feel that fear when it comes to my time. It's
probably most people do at the moment.
Yeah, there's always that slight feeling of is it going to be as easy as as I've been told it is? But
right, is the transition going to be easy? Am I going to be judged and found wanting? All these things go through.
I think probably a bigger fear is how you die. If you go through a lot of pain before you die and things like that, I think that's what a lot of people suffer, don't they, before they die? And I guess that's all part of living.
Well, it's like there are certain things that are set in stone. The time you come in, the time you leave, and the method in which you leave. So all of that you've decided before you even come down and live a human life. A friend of mine, she lives in Romford, and her husband died. It was a year ago, May. She was in the hospital having surgery, and he sat down to have a nap before he went to work. He's a bus driver, and he never woke up. And he's like, he came to me when he crossed, and he said, I knew I was going to die by a heart attack, he said, but He says, what we don't know is the circumstances surrounding that death. We don't know where we're going to be. We don't know who's going to be present. None of that. We just know that we're going to die of getting hit by a car or whatever,
Yeah.
So he says, I'm so glad my wife and daughter didn't find me. He says, I'm so glad of that.
So, have you ever seen the actual astral self leaving the body at all? Have you said that?
Yeah.
You have seen that?
I worked hospital work for years.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's...
As a nurse, I've seen it.
See, that's another interesting aspect, that you being a nurse as well. I mean, a lot of, actually, as you know, in the medical profession, they would poo-poo a lot of things about the astral body and everything. You know, obviously we hear of doctors saying that it's something that goes on in the brain that gives you some sort of a false memory of dying and things like that.
Because they don't understand. You know, you can't tell me that if any one of those ones that says that ever had a near-death experience or they died and came back, they would change their tune 100%. Yeah.
I mean, it's always...
it's just a matter...
We kind of hear that when people are close to death, that their loved ones who have already passed over come and visit, and they often see them in... just before they're dying, so they've actually come back.
They'll come.
They've actually come back to collect them.
Wait for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of them will wait for them. Like the husband will wait for the wife, and vice versa, or the mother for the child. You know, that sort of thing. So that they're there to help you to, take your hand and take you to the other side.
Yeah, because we do hear that people actually do look peaceful a lot of the time when they're actually going, passing over.
Yeah, because they know that the loved one is there, and they're happy with that. You know? But then you get the ones that look like they're scared. Those are the ones who, I've had people that have come to me and said, I was dead and I came back, but I didn't see any white light. All I saw was black.
Right.
And pain and suffering, and evil. I'm like, well, it's kind of a wake-up call to tell you, you better change your ways, or, that could be waiting for you. And most of the time, people get scared straight.
Yeah. I mean, what you said about your reincarnated lives, was it 100 and how many was it?
This is the 131st lifetime.
131st. So you can actually remember all of those or some of them?
I remember each and every lifetime.
Wow. So what would have been your
sometimes
earliest?
I wish I didn't.
So what would
1198 AD.
Right, so that's 131 lives between 11 so they're actually quite close together then, your lives, really, when you look at it.
Yeah, she wasn't allowed, because what happened was, in 1198 AD, there was a woman who had summoned a demon, and she was actually possessed by it, and it was taking her over completely, and she asked God for help, and he sent Ariel, and Ariel appeared before the woman, and when the woman saw her, the demon came to the front, and her eyes, turned black, and she growled. And Ariel told him, stupid demon, what are you doing? He said, you, human, you are the one who summoned this demon, and now you want help? She had no sympathy. She said, so be it. And so she ripped the demon out of the woman. Well, the body died. The woman's body died. And Ariel, sent the demon back into the dark realm. And she got called before God, and God said, listen, this isn't the first time this has happened. You have no regard for humans. You have no compassion. You have no caring for them. And Ariel argued with him and said, you know what? This human summoned this thing. They get what they deserve. And he goes, that's not how it's supposed to be. So he says, you'll go back and you'll live human lives until you learn to have compassion for mankind. And that's the last thing she wanted to do, was to be subject to a shell. So it seems like it was probably years down here, but over there it was seconds. and she was sent back down. Michael says, "Don't worry about it. I'm going to be with you in each lifetime. I'll make sure that, that you always know I'm here." So when she was reborn, it took her 3 or 4 lifetimes to actually understand emotions, because on the other side, they haven't been human for so long. They understand the concept of love. They understand the concept of pain, of depression, but they don't know the actual emotion, because they've been on the other side for so long that they, don't know how it feels. And so it took her 3 or 4 lifetimes before she got the hang of, emotions, dealing with emotions, whatever. She's had lives where it's kind of funny, because when I went to the UK in 17, I went to a place called the Cage.
Oh yeah. In Essex,
I removed the demons that were there. And, the woman called me up and said, a friend of mine called me from America and said, I can't call you back. I said, I'm in the UK. She said, well, there's this woman over there. She needs help. And I'm like, okay, I'll send her a message. So I sent Vanessa the message, and I went over to the Tower of London to visit. And I got back. It's like, he had a message, says, I don't normally do this, but I felt compelled to call you. And she says, this is what is here. I had never heard of it before. And I said, send me a picture. I said, I'll do the removal while I'm on the treadmill. Thank you. So I did.
Yeah, I think that's got a different owner now. I think they've stopped all the.
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was sold. Yeah. Thing is, she says, I have an American psychic walking through, and he doesn't deal with negatives. I said, Chris Fleming. And I said, well, you can tell him to go through. I said, there's nothing left there. I do good work. I took it out. And he went through the next day, and he didn't find anything negative left there. I'm like, yeah, I do good work.
Oh, now I know why, because I've actually heard that that's been cleansed pretty much. And there's not a lot there, so now I know who did it. It was you.
Yeah. Because Vanessa had said I had friends try to, one of the best mediums in all of the UK tried to remove them and couldn't. And I'm like, well, if they had an angel inside of them, they could do it. But,
so,
they don't.
So those past lives, are they always female, or do you come back as male as well?
That's the funny part. It's like, I asked her about that. I said, how come you never came back as a male? And she looked at me and she said, the female energy is the strongest energy. She said, the male energy is weak. And I'm like, that's the way she thinks. And I'm like, okay, whatever you say. Whatever you want. She says, that's why I don't come back as a male. She says, the female energy is the strongest. Right, so, the most enduring.
So all of those 131 lives, it's always been female, yeah?
Right. I was actually, it was funny because, it was ironic because I was actually hung. I was actually in the women's prison at St. Osis. I was actually in the cage and was hung. So that's why it kind of resonated with me when I heard the name and saw a visual of it. I'm like, okay, no good deed goes unpunished.
Yeah.
In that lifetime, I was removing a demon from a little girl, and they said that I was a demon because I had dominion over this demon. Right. I could get rid of it. So they had me.
So do you actually get the memories of how you died as well? Well, because that must be pretty bad. Or if you've got like 131 of them, and some of those have been pretty, traumatic.
Yeah, a lot of them were traumatic. The last one before this one, I was strangled to death.
Wow. And you have that memory.
Yeah, I remember each and every death. It doesn't affect me. And partly because, it's done, it's over. I had to learn from each death, each life. So I never have feared death. And I think that's why. I think it's a part of that is all those lifetimes.
Well, I don't quite know what to say there. So in your paranormal investigations, have you ever come across poltergeists?
Oh yeah. But usually, there's usually a demon behind it.
Right.
There's, usually it's a lesser demon. People don't understand is old demons rarely come into the physical world. We're not worth their time and effort. We're a pain to them. They don't want to deal with us. But I call the lesser demons, these are the younger demons. And they're like hormonal teenagers. They're like running rampant and causing as much hate and destruction as they possibly can. Those are the ones you're liable to find. And what happens is they can control human souls. Somebody dies, and they can hold on to that soul, keep it trapped, and they can utilize them to do things for them where, like, say, I create a black salt, and it's a black salt. It's a special recipe that God gave me when I started removing demons to help people, to protect them. And if there's a place where the black salt has been laid down and the demon can't get through, they'll use a human spirit to go get through the line, the protection, and cause problems. Give the person nightmares, move things, all kinds of things. And that's where a lot of that poltergeist, quote unquote, that's what that is. It's a human spirit that's being manipulated. I would say about 50% of the time they're being manipulated by a demon. But the other half, it's just them trying to say, here I am, help me. I don't know where to go. I don't know how to get home. Can you help me?
Yeah, so they're actually people that are passed over, maybe not know they're dead, and Yeah,
it happens sometimes. I had a case in LeGrand, Oregon. It's over in eastern Oregon. And this man died. He had a heart attack, died in his chair. The last thing he remembered was having chest pain, and he was sitting in his recliner. Next thing he knew, his son and daughter-in-law were in his home discussing how, they were going to rent it out. And he's like, I'm here. What are you talking about? But of course, they couldn't hear him, they couldn't see him. So a friend of mine lives over there, and she says, I have this friend that they need help, because there's this ghost in their house. So I went over, and the minute I hit the porch, the carport, I'm like, oh, okay, I know who's here, I know what's here. So I go in, and I told the lady that had the house, did you mind? I said, I gotta go talk to your ghost. And I went into the living room, and he was sitting there in the chair. And I asked him, I said, what was the last thing you remember? And he told me, I said, you went into kind of like, if you were still alive, would be shock. I said, everything goes black, and then suddenly you wake up. And you don't know where you are or what's going on. I said, it's kind of like that. I said, if you want to go home, I will help you to go home. He said, my son and daughter-in-law rented out my house. I didn't like the people that were renting it, that they must have went through 4 or 5 different renters until this other couple came. And he said they didn't respect my house. They didn't take care of my house. They didn't take care of my garden. I said, well, what about the people that are here now? And he's like, I like them. They take care of my garden. They're taking care of my house. And I said, okay, so you know that the house is in good hands. He said, yes. I said, then it's time for you to go home. I said, it's time for you to go see your wife and your parents. And we discussed things for a little while longer, and then he left and went home.
Right. There's something I always wondered about when you get an earthbound spirit. Well, why does it seem to be that they need help from this side rather than the other side? That's what I can't quite get my head round.
Because they're kind of caught in a different dimension. If you think of it like people talk about veils, okay? So there's a dark side, and there's a veil between the dark side and our world. And then there's a veil between our world and kind of like a limbo. And then there's another veil between that and upstairs, as we say, heaven. So there's all these areas, and they're caught between the physical world and the other world, the spiritual world. So they're kind of caught in between, they don't know how to get out of where they are. They don't know how to get out of that dimension and move on to the next. And nobody from upstairs, so to speak, heaven, is coming to help them. So they've decided that, maybe they can get help from the living, because they're kind of like really close to the physical plane. So that's why they try to seek help from the living.
Right.
And sometimes it takes years because, people just like, I'm getting out of here. It's a haunted house. I'm leaving. I'm not renting this anymore.
Yeah.
But that's why if you die and you don't ascend, you remain stuck in your physical world consciousness. You have the same habits, the same desires, everything. But if you ascend, all that's left behind. And, you look back and say, oh, well, that was a wild ride. On to the next, But, that's what happens. Sometimes if you die quickly, traumatically, you get stuck. You don't know what's going on. You miss the tunnel because he went into that ghost in Lundgren, he went into a kind of shock. So everything went black. So he missed the tunnel. He missed his ticket, so to speak, his ride. So he was stuck here. And he didn't know how to find the tunnel again. He didn't know how to find where he was supposed to go. And that's where I came in. I can create a white light tunnel in my head, and they can see it, and they'll go into it. But if they die traumatically, or maybe they want, somebody killed them and I want revenge, that type of thing, they'll stay earthbound, or in the, some people get caught in their death state. I was at a cemetery. I never go to cemeteries because they always follow me. But I was at a cemetery by accident. My sister-in-law wanted to go on a ghost walk, and I ended up in a cemetery. So there's, the whole bunch of, the spirits know you're going to be there before you know you're going to be there. So this one guy I'm like, what's up with you? I said, why are you still stuck in your death state? He was covered in blood. He had a suitcase in his hand. A briefcase in his hand. He was wearing a suit. And he's like, I can't go. I can't cross. I'm like, why? Why not? He said, because I was on my way to my girlfriend's house, and my wife didn't know about my girlfriend. And he's Catholic. So he thought, I can't. I'll go to hell. I can't cross over. I'm like, suit yourself. I said, but just so you know, I said, yes, you have to answer for what you've done. I said, but he's not going to give you 20 lashes, I said, you can cross.
So, are they unable to get help from the other side? So really, I suppose they're more connected to this side than the other side.
Yeah. They still have that connection here. Plus, a lot of them think that, I've done bad or whatever, and I can't go there, or nobody will want to help me, and so therefore they actually, block somebody from, angelic to come and get them because they're blocking them. They're like, oh, I can't do that, I can't go.
Yeah.
I've been bad.
Right. So you mentioned Ariel. So that Ariel is actually your spirit guide. Is that right, or is that something different?
Ariel is my soul. Ariel the archangel resides within me. That's what makes me able to remove a demon in a matter of seconds.
So do you have a spirit guide as well as Ariel?
My sister Anne. She was 2.5 months old when she died. Oh. But I don't see her as that. She shows herself as she was in the lifetime prior to that. So she's like, can you imagine? She said, it would have freaked you out badly if I had shown myself as a baby.
Yeah, sad, but I understand.
Yeah, I said, I see your point. Okay. Yeah, my great grandmother Hannah. There are two that are with me always, and then Michael's always around, and Gabe.
Sure.
Gabriel.
And there are obviously spirit beings that you've probably known all through your different lifetimes. I imagine we have those connections. Through all our lives. I mean, I don't know how many lives I've had. Maybe this is the first. I don't know. I doubt it. But
well, see, there's not much known about Ariel. I mean, I'd never even heard of her until I died and came back. And you look her up, and all you can find is she's one of the 5 that guard the throne of God, and her name means Lion of God. But really she's so much more. People don't understand that she's always been a demon slayer. She's one of the 4 of the Legion of Light. Before the war between heaven and hell, God created the Legion of Light. It's made up of Ariel, Raphael, Michael, and Gabriel. All 4 of them. They, in turn, trained other warrior angels and other archangels because they knew what was coming. God said, it's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when Lucifer is going to raise himself against me, because he always wanted to be head guy. So they created what they call the Legion of Light. And the Legion of Light trained all of these warrior angels. And right now there's a lot of warrior angels in the world that are reborn into physical bodies. A lot of people think, well, why isn't God helping us? What's going on with that? But he is helping. He's sending the warrior angels back to live human lives. You think they want to live human lives? No. But they come back because he tells them, this is what your job is. You need to help create light workers, bring light workers to, make them grow, make your followers grow. So there are 8 archangels in the world today. Ariel's one of them. Hanel's another one of them. And I've found all of them but one. I still have to find the last one. And with each one, you have to make sure that they understand who they are and what they are and what their purpose is in this lifetime. And each one of them, really, they've always known that they were different subconsciously. They have abilities that other people don't have, and they have their quote unquote intuition is such that they know things that other people don't know. These are the warrior angels. These are the archangels. Each one of them has a different mission. Ariel's is to kill demons, and she loves it. And there's another one in California whose job is he's a strategist. His name is Telecom. We call him T. And there was a man in Arizona who came to me because he is having, possession influence. He's under demonic influence. And so he called me and I removed the demon. And once the demon was removed, I could see the archangel underneath it. And the archangel underneath it was sleeping, basically. It was not forward. So once that happened, the archangel came forward and he could hear what the archangel was saying. He could hear his thoughts. He could see him in his mind's eye and feel him. And he's like, before I removed the demon, he was on drugs and stuff. Once the demon was removed, he never touched another drug or a cigarette or anything else.
So a lot of this is in your book, is it? A medium's guide?
Yeah.
That sounds good.
Well, no, that was the first one I wrote. That was back in 2009. So we're talking about, 11 years ago. But the new book, Demon Seer, the first in the volume, there's going to be 4 volumes. The first one talks about awareness. The whole point of the first book is to bring awareness.
Wow.
I actually completed the book last December. And then I realized that it was geared towards people who knew something about the paranormal, who were into the paranormal. And I decided, that's not how it needs to be. It needs to be geared to people who don't know anything about the paranormal, maybe are curious about it or have had an experience of their own and want answers. And so that's why this book is important. In it, there are 2 really important chapters. One is on protection, what will protect you and what won't. And the other one is where to get help, how to help yourself and where to get help. I have gotten, people like Keith and Carl Johnson, who are demonologists. I've got the Archbishop of the Order of St. Michael's exorcist, who has all these people are allowing me to put their websites and everything and their connections, how to connect with them in the book, so that no matter where a person is, they can get help.
That sounds great. I've got to get your Medium's Guidebook, and no doubt I'll have to follow up with the other ones as well. But what I'll do, I'll actually put connections. I'll actually put links to all those on the Paranormal Dimensions site, so anyone sort of listening to this show can it might guide them to it. But it sounds fantastic.
I think the book that's resonated the most of the ones I've already have out, and I've been selling a lot of them in the UK, is The Dark Side of the Paranormal. Because in it, I talk, people have been after me for years to help to talk about it, basically expose the negative entities. So in this book, I tell, their method of operation, what they do, how they do it, how they work, what their fears are, what their weaknesses are, how to deal with them. If you can, if you can't, then you seek help elsewhere. But it's a really good, so many people have told me, this book saved my life. It really helped me to understand, because it was written like, what I'm going through. And, like you've been there. I said, I have been there with people, but I have empathic capabilities, but I had to shut that down, because when you're dealing with demons, you can't be feeling all those feelings from the people that are involved, the people that have gone through this, pain and suffering from the demons, because it's a weakness. Yeah. If they sense a weakness, they'll use it against you. They'll do something to the people that are there with you. And if you shut it down, then you have no connection with them. So they can't try to distract you from doing what you're doing. But that doesn't mean I don't feel it. I feel it. I just can't let it affect me. Sure. Otherwise I'll be useless to remove the demon.
Well, June, I hope you do manage to get over it next year, and and I hope I get to meet you. Actually, I'll tell you what. I've got a good friend named Philip Kinsella. He's quite a well-known medium over here. I'd love to get you two together, because I can imagine the conversation you'd have.
That'd be interesting. Yeah,
so
that'd be cool.
Well, I'll see if I can work on that.
Yeah, I'll be in the UK from the 12th to the 26th of June, 2021.
12th to the 26th. Great. Well, we'll keep in touch, and hopefully I'll get to meet you, and perhaps you can sign my books as well by the time I've got them then.
There you go.
It's been fantastic having you on the show, June, and I hope you've got something out of it, and I'm sure your friends will enjoy listening to you again. It's been...
I always have a good time.
It's been really interesting, and thank you very much for sparing the time to come on.
Oh, you've been lovely. I enjoyed our time together.
Oh, lovely. Thank you very much. I'm honoured, actually, to have you on. So, but anyway, I hope you'll come back again sometime.
Oh yeah,
perhaps when you get your series of 4 books out. Well, actually, you'll be. Maybe I'll even see you by then. We'll see how we go. Perhaps we'll do a live show, eh?
Yeah, that'd be cool.
But anyway, I'll let you go now, June, and thank you very much for coming on.
Thanks for having me. You take care.
You too. Thank you very much. And you take care of yourself, and I will look forward to seeing you next year. Right.
Okay.
Thanks, June. Bye-bye. Bye. You've been listening to Paranormal Dimensions on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. I'm David Young. Hope you'll join us again next week. Thank you. Goodbye.
Paranormal Dimensions is as bright and powerful as our celestial star, the sun. And although it's expending thousands of pounds of energy every minute of the day, have no fear. There's plenty left.
Dimensions is a regular feature on Mondays on the Paranormal UK radio network.